Autogen, one of the first frameworks that I spent a lot of time with under Microsoft. And since then, I had done a video or two videos where I interviewed the founder of Autogen, Shiwan, and then whenever they split up. So there's actually two versions of Autogen. I'm going to be speaking about the original version, which now is known as AG2. So today I'm going to have a crash course on AG2, one of the frameworks that I love. All right, so let's go over how a couple of the basic agents work and how you actually import the configuration for your models. So the first thing is, they have an assistant agent and a user proxy agent. They have more, but the assistant agent and the user proxy agent are two of the main ones. And how you import models, your keys and everything into these agents is you actually make a config list. It's like an array of JSON information, and you actually pass that in from a JSON file. So this LLM config, we're going to be passing in a config list JSON file. It looks something like this. I'm going to pass in the model and the API key for GPT 4.1, but you can actually pass in a list and determine which model that you want to use for each agent. Then with the assistant agent, we have the name, the system message, and we pass in that LLM config. And same thing for the user proxy agent, we have the name. There are a couple parameters here that are pretty important. So you pass in what the expected termination message is. So when this agent sees terminate as part of the message, then it knows, okay, we're done and we can stop the whole conversation and we basically get the output. So the human input mode is never. This can be never, always, or terminate. So if it's never, that means that human input is never allowed. If it says always, then at each turn of the conversation that we can be a part of that and then say, hey, we didn't like this. Go ahead and do this instead. And then for the code execution, like I had mentioned in the small agents framework, is that you typically don't want to have your actual Python code execution on your local machine or your server. Maybe you want to use in like some sandbox server. So here, instead, you could set use Docker to true. And if you have Docker set up on your machine, then if it was going to execute code, it would execute it there instead of your local machine. And then let's see how a tool works also for this agent. So there are really a couple ways that you can do this, but how we're going to do it is first, let's come down here. Let's work backwards. So I have a register function. Okay, this is going to be, we're going to register a function to an agent. So the agent, right? So if we come up here, we have the currency bot as the name of the assistant agent. So here, in the register function, the caller, this is the currency bot. The executor, so the user proxy agent is actually going to execute the function, right, from that agent. The tool name is going to be currency calculator, which is basically just a function here. So we have this currency calculator Python function, and then this exchange rate is just, it's just a part of this function. So these two are just functions. The currency calculator is the top level that we're calling. And then we basically say user proxy. So the user proxy agent, we're going to say initiate the chat with the currency bot. And we're going to ask how much is $123.45 USD in euros. Now, if I run this, I'm going to say o1_tools. Again, you will have all this information in my GitHub and in my school community for free. Okay, so here is the user proxy, and I kind of like the way they set this up, right? So the currency bot is now saying the suggested tool is the currency calculator. So it's passing in the base amount, the base currency, and the quote currency. So it's passing the parameters into the function. Okay, so it's executing the function, and then this is the response from the tool call. So the currency bot is saying 123 USD is approximately 143 euro. And then finally, you see that the currency bot says terminate. So it sees that we're done, and then we basically complete the message. Okay, so for this next example, I'm going to show you the Conversable agent. And this is basically the top level agent. All the other ones are subclasses of this agent. Okay, so you could just import Conversable agent. Everything could be a part of this. So you could create a bunch of agents just from Conversable agent. But the thing is, the other agents are fine-tuned for their specific things, right? So we have a user proxy agent. Okay, that represents us. So there are certain parameters that are being done for the user. Then the assistant agent is typically whenever we're asking LLM or having some sort of LLM call and give those tools for that agent. And so the difference is the other agents that we just described, the user proxy and the assistant agent, have specific parameters defaulted, where here in the Conversable agent, you would have to kind of explicitly say them and give them their properties. So this will work the same way, right? This will work the same way that we just did, but here you can modify it to have be your own agent, but the other way, as I recommend, is defining the assistant agent and the user proxy agent. I just wanted to show you that you can define your own agents at the top level called the Conversable agent. So let's run a better example with multiple agents. Okay, so let's say we have a planner message and a reviewer message. These are going to be the system messages for our agents. Okay, so we will use one with the Conversable agent. So we have a lesson planner agent, right? This is supposed to create or revise lesson plans. Then we have another one where it provides one round of feedback to the lesson plans. Okay, so now we have another agent. Okay, so this is going to be part of the termination message. So it's going to be looking for the word done as part of the conversation. Whenever it sees that, then it knows that we are done with the conversation and we no longer need to proceed forward. Okay, so then they have they have an auto selection pattern. So we're going to pass in all of the agents, all three of them, right? So the teacher, lesson planner, and lesson reviewer. The initial agent is the lesson planner here. Okay, that's the top level, or that's the top level agent. And then we have a group manager. Okay, so now with the group manager, we also passed in the LLM config. And this is just so we can add extra settings to the group manager. So with the auto pattern is basically going to determine, based on the context of these agents, which one is best to use as part of the conversation. It's just going to kind of decide that for you in the background. And then we're going to run a group chat where the pattern is auto selection. And then we are going to just say, let's introduce our agents, the AI agents, and we only want a max rounds of 5. Okay, so once it completes max rounds of 5, whether or not the chat is actually done or not, we're done. Let's go ahead and run this. And so we can see how this is working. Okay, so the next speaker is going to say the planner agent. This means that it's decided that the planner agent is the next one to determine what we do moving forward. So it's going to introduce AI agents to at a grade 4 level. Here's kind of the plan that you would have for your students. So then the next speaker is the reviewer agent. Okay, so now it just basically saying, the lesson plan is well structured, aligns with with the curriculum goals. Here are 3 suggested improvements for an even stronger match and the impact for your students. Okay, so basically comes with a summary table. Then the teacher agent, this is all going to the group manager. Group manager has all of these agents together. And then it's saying, okay, thanks for the feedback. Here's how I would incorporate your excellent suggestions. They give their suggestions. So then now we're replying as the user. So what I can either do is I can either just press enter to skip and use auto reply, or I can give my own feedback. So I can say, I like your suggestions. Let's go with this. Okay, so because I see what happened actually now is that we reached a maximum of 5 rounds. So no matter what, you can see it just cut off the conversation. Basically what's happening here though is we're just talking back and forth with these agents and they're deciding on, maybe there are better ways to make this curriculum for your students or not. And then I, as a human or as a user, can be a part of this conversation and let them know whether I like it or things I like or I don't like. So now let's talk about how RAG can be used as part of your agents. So how this works is, again, get used to the LLM config, how they use it with JSON here. And then we're going to have a function called give agent file listings. Basically, this is going to take whatever directory I'm in. It's basically just going to list those files and put them in a string. Okay, this is just going to be simple RAG based on what we have currently in our directory. Then we have another conversable agent. Okay, so this is going to say, hey, you're just a helpful agent answering questions about the files in a directory. So what we do now is we register a hook. Okay, for this files agent here, file agent.hook, register hook, we're saying, okay, pass in this function. We're going to be calling it update agent state. Okay, so now we have a conversable agent, name is human. The human input mode is never. See, this is very similar to the user proxy agent. And then we have max consecutive auto reply of 2. Okay, the maximum number of times that it will auto reply to them. Okay, so then we can just say initiate the chat with the files agent and just say, tell me about the files in my directory. Okay. That's all we want to do. Okay, and so basically what happened is it just says to the files agent, tell me about the files in my directory, right? So it used the tool to retrieve all of the files. It went through all of the files, and here it's just basically giving a simple description of each of those files. And then because we said to a max number of rounds, 1, it reached that, and now we're done. Okay, so that's going to stop the whole conversation. Okay, and so then finally, what I want to tell you about is how you can have a sequential chat. So, a lot of times you don't need just agents to do everything. You can also have automations, essentially, where things are done in a sequential order. And there's a lot of times where that's perfectly fine. You could just have code do a lot of these things. You don't have to have an AI agent necessarily for literally everything. So how that works is that we're going to have a few different messages here, right? Okay, so we're going to have a lessons planner, a formatter, we're going to have a teacher. So basically all these messages are going to be different parts of this sequential automation that we're basically going to have. Okay, so let's just come down here first. So we have a lesson curriculum, lesson planner, lesson formatter, and then the teacher. Okay, these are all agents, right? But each of these messages are for the system messages are for each of them. Okay. So then down here, how this works, right? You say teacher. So this is the main agent where we start. We're say initiate chats. So we want to have a chat with the lesson curriculum agent, then the lesson planner agent, and then the lesson formatter agent. Okay. And so here we have a maximum number of turns 2 for lesson planner, but everybody else has a maximum turn of 1. So basically once they say one thing, it's going to move on and is done. Okay. And so then we're just going to basically get the results of each of those chats so we can see what happened. But this is how this works. We're just going to start from top to bottom, this recipient, the lesson curriculum, then lesson planner, and then lesson formatter. Okay. So the teacher agent is talking to the curriculum agent. So let's create a science lesson. What's a good topic? Okay. So then the curriculum agent tells us a topic. Then the teacher agent goes to the next agent, which if we come down here was the lesson planner. Okay, so the teacher said to the lesson planner, okay, you need to create a lesson plan. Here is the context, which is coming from the previous agent we just talked to. So now the teacher agent, or the planner agent, I'm sorry, is saying back to the teacher agent, here is a full lesson that you can use. So the teacher agent says, okay, thank you for your plan. Here's my feedback. And then now it's kind of like waiting to get something back. And then the next one will be lesson formatter. Okay, so if we scroll up here, just finish something, right? So now the teacher is talking to the formatter agent, says format the lesson plan. Great. Here is the context, is basically telling information about what it was and then what they had talked about in the previous message. And so now they just basically formatted everything. And then here the formatter agent is giving something back to the teacher agent. And then we're finally done because we only go through one time. And so here is the summary and the full lesson plan and a lesson script that we can use. So it kind of gave us everything that we want to use. And this was an automation. So if we run this, it'll generally, give us the same answer if we can give it different topics, but it'll go through the same exact steps every time. Okay. So this was AG2. They have updated their website. I always have a little more love for this framework. Maybe that's a little biased, but that's because I spent a lot of time with them and I had talked to the founder, like I said, amazing person, very, very intelligent. Loved talking with them. But give this some love, star them on GitHub, and here are some more courses for you to watch, and all this will be in my free GitHub and my free school community down below in the description.